1,000 words for a novel.
Yeah.
It's a commitment.
Yeah, so I'm very methodical and disciplined myself. So once I needed a plan, so having done the research and had the original idea, I set out a chapter plan and wrote about 2 paragraphs for each chapter in the plan. And then once I'd finished that and I was happy with it, I started the writing, and I said to myself, I knew it kind of had to be somewhere around 80 to 90,000. So I was like, right, well, I could do 1,000 words a day, which would be like, I'll give myself weekends off because I've got to be a dad. Right? So it'd be like 5,000 a week.
You're a dad just 2 days a week. That's a good deal.
Well, if I'm lucky to be fair. Estelle will have her own views about that. So yeah, 2 days might be generous. So then, I thought, okay, well that's kind of like 20 weeks. 20 weeks I should get it done. And I pretty much stuck to that. Some days I did 2,000 words, you got in the flow. Other days you just couldn't get started and go, I'll just put it on Netflix today. But I was doing 5 to 6, 7,000 a week. And then just boom, week after week after week after week. I was lucky in that for this novel, the family had gone away. Right? So they went.
If it wasn't for you guys, you could have had 3 or 4 books done by now.
I could be like, so they'd gone back to Spain with the Padawans, and I was left on my own for several months. So it was kind of a choice between Netflix, red wine, or getting the words done with red wine. That was always going to be the assist. So I just did that. I literally came home from work, made something to eat, went upstairs, bought the red wine, got the computer. Right, I've got to do 2,000 words, and did it.
So if we want your next book done quicker, we just got to send us there back.
Just send us there.
Yes, great.
She won't object. She won't object.
In this space, sort of crime fiction space and the thriller space, I often find former foreign correspondents, lawyers, politicians, etc., write the most interesting books because they have some lived experience that they can draw from. You've had a pretty interesting life. So do you want to just tell me about some of the sort of where you grew up, the countries you've been, some of the wild jobs you did?
I agree with you. I always find, Grisham was a lawyer, Michael Robotham, journo. So lawyers and journalists are fantastic writers because they're used to deadlines and they're prolific. And I remember Fiona McIntosh telling me, the best writers write from their experience. They write what they know about, right? So it's authentic. And as you say, I've had a pretty colourful life. Grew up in England, working class family, state schools, all that sort of thing. I went camping every weekend, and I thought my parents were rich because I went on holiday every weekend. Right? But we just went to the end of the garden. Right? But then I fell in love with mathematics at school and history. I had an amazing history teacher called Mr. Harris. He deadly aim with a piece of chalk and a duster. And I loved everything he taught me. And then, my parents took me on to Normandy when I was 14, cycling holiday. And I went first walk trenches, to the beaches, the Normandy landings, and fell in love with that. When I went to university, studied accountancy and law. I was going to be an accountant. And hated that. And I left the day I finished my last exam, didn't even stay for graduation, flew to Hong Kong and turned up at Deloitte and said, give me a job. They did. And from there on, I just travelled with work. I've been to 55 countries. I've worked in about 12 of them. Been to every state in America bar 4. So intensive travel. And as if you read the book and you know me well, a lot of people are now coming up and saying, hey, there's a lot of you in this book, right? And even Esther said to me today, she goes, I think our intimacy is now blown wide open in your novel.
I've got a question about that later.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, I know what you know, right? So yeah, that's what I did. Even that choice of Harrods, you know, my first audit for Deloitte was the Harrods Bank, and I went down there and counted gold bars. Yeah, incredible.
When you write a book, there's a lot that goes into it. The obvious things, character development, dialogue, prose, pages, are all important. In my 25 years in publishing, and I firmly believe this, the number one thing is still always plot, right? And lots of people forget this and write meandering books that go nowhere. How did you come up with this creating plot?
Yeah, I had a admiration for Turing. I was appalled when I learnt the story, what the British government did to him. Yeah, they were totally to blame for his death because of what they did, just because he was gay. Yeah, it's incredible when you think today, right? You know, that only 75 years ago it was illegal to be gay, right? And you were persecuted, and you had to be driven underground,
Castrated.
and then yeah, chemically castrated, right? You know, awful. So that kind of story resonated with me, and then I went to Bletchley Park, right? And saw what he did, and that's when I started thinking about the moral dilemma, right? I mean, it's people know it from the movie, but it's absolutely true. Because I've spoken to the family. He had choices to make, where he knew where every submarine from the German Third Reich was, and then he knew where the convoys were, and he chose sometimes to let convoys go and be sunk, because if he didn't, they would have known the game was up, and they would have changed the code completely, and he would have been dark. So he was playing God, right? And I just thought, wow, what's that decision like? Yeah, and then you start thinking about presidents of today. They've got the button, right? Do they? That's scary.
Yeah.
Thinking about presidents of today.
Yeah.
Right? So I kind of thought, there's a good moral dilemma here. So I could see that there could be an interesting play from that. And then I thought, well, it's fiction. I can make stuff up. So I thought I'd enjoy that. Yeah.
So speaking of fiction, time travel is a popular concept in novels. I've watched the Diana Gabaldon Outlander series, where you walk through the stones and you end up in a kilt in 16th century Scotland, which does look fun actually. When the coffee gets cold, it's a bestseller at the moment about a special chair in a cafe sends you back in time. My favourite one actually is The Time Traveller's Wife, where the husband has a rare genetic disorder which sends him back in time. Which if you and I could get that, we could go fishing and just blame it on the genetic disorder, and that's where it works there. We just come back in time. And we went that way.
I wasn't there.
One of the things I found fascinating in your book is the closest I read in a time travel book to something that could actually happen. So do you want to just talk to me a little bit about that concept and science?
I knew there was going to be some time slip here, and as you say, all these other books that you read are just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right? You can't sit on a chair or just stand on and go through a walk. Right? But I went to Geneva. I've been to the CERN Institute, right, where they've got this 24-kilometer collider magnetic accelerator, right? And they are currently throwing particles around this thing at 99.9999% of the speed of light. Okay? And they're trying to recreate the Big Bang. So there's only this little problem from a chap called Einstein that says they can't get to 100%. And they are probably right, but I thought as an author in fiction, 99.9999 true is actually pretty believable. Right? So I was just trying to get the readers to just go, oh well, that might in the future maybe happen. Right? So rather than, you can just touch a rock and you're gone. And I wasn't sending a body in time, I was only sending an electronic message, a Morse code message, which are electrons. In the book it's only sodium, not 24 kilometres, but again, there's fiction for you. That's just stretching the truth, but the truth is out there. So I thought this is much more believable, and then you get the confidence of the reader to say, okay, if we can believe in the physics, right, and I studied the physics, then the rest of the story can be believable too.
This is what I was going back to when you talk about plot. So a good plot-based book, because you can condense to one line, and the basic premise of your novel is you've created a time machine where you can send a message back in time 8 weeks. Is that enough time to change the course of history? Right? Which is a great single pitch for the book. The history in the book is really rich and really vivid and immaculately researched. And the funny thing about that is, of course, you start by reading a history that's not accurate. And it's before the Northwoods machine has changed history as we know it. So yeah, just tell me a little bit more about your love of history and the research that went into this, because it is tremendous to read the fake history and the real history.
Yeah, and I say, if it wasn't for the editor, there'd be more. Right?
I'm not the editor, I'm the sales guy too.
Yeah, obviously love history, and I've got 80 years of history in this book. So I started in World War II, and I go right up to through COVID into the Ukraine war. And what I was challenging myself to write was, again, because it's based on truth, and they always say the best lie is based on truth, is that I would hopefully confuse the reader to the point that they don't actually know whether they're in the part that I've made up or they're in the part that's real, and they have to go, and it's happened because they've told me, they have to go to Google and go, did that really happen? And I think if they've done that, I've succeeded, right? And then to put in a twist at the end that maybe upsets that whole shenanigans. So yeah, the history for me is the passion, right? And I know a lot about it, and I researched a lot for this book, and I know the numbers of the Panzer divisions that are there, and again, I think having that authenticity makes it rich, right? And also pace. To do 80, I think you told me, I said it could have been 2 books here, right? But to have the 80 years all in 320 pages, I think introduces a lot of pace. And as a reader, I love pace, and I thought, I'm not going to write a book that is dull.
I think we all had a time machine. We'd probably use it for silly things. We'd use it for financial gain, or we'd win some sporting contest that we lost because of some mistake. We'd probably undo some bad haircuts we made over the years. But what I love about the book is you're imagining if Turing had created a time machine, and your next thought is someone as smart as Turing would have thought about the consequences immediately of doing so, and created sophisticated protocols around the use of the machine. And so essentially, what I want to know is really, how did you choose? So the protocols basically said you can only use it for major world events, right? So how did you choose the four major world events?
Yeah, so the 4 major world events, obviously World War II was going to always be there. That's where he started. So as I started at World War II, there's a lot going on after that, but nothing massive. The Cold War was a bit political rather than people shooting each other. So then for me, 9/11, right, was obviously a major event that changed the world forever, and woke the Americans up. I've got COVID in there, but of course that comes up with another part of the story about sometimes you can't change things. Right? There is no magic button, even if you had a time machine.
Yeah.
Right? And I thought that was good. Right? That was kind of like sending the reader down a rabbit hole. Right? And then I thought, well, what's the present day thing? Well, the Ukraine war, I think it's probably the biggest thing. But I do mention other wars and the futility of war. I think there's I've got friends here from Serbia. The Serbo-Croat War, horrible, and again, it was hard to change. So I think I showed that even with a time machine, even being in government and having power, some things, even with that, just can't be changed.
We did touch on it before. There is a bit of a Spanish love story throughout the book. I think Spaniards are often sort of described as passionate and fiery. Did you think about getting a sensitivity read before you showed Lucia what you drew?
No. In fact, I gave her the book to read, and then I was like looking at the page number she was on, thinking she's going to get this in a minute. And then I saw her face flush, right? And I thought, bingo, I did it.
Nice work.
Nice work.
I just want to quickly talk about Harrods, because it's there and it's on the cover and it's such an incredible building. I think everyone in the world knows about Harrods. Your personal experience with Harrods is fascinating, the story. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so I say I started as an auditor, my first audit at Harrods, doing the bank. It was an amazing place. I was there for the first day of the January sales, and they took, this was in the 80s, it took £6 million in cash, right, on the first day. They all came down on these trolleys with armed guards, well, not armed, but guards, and me, right, and I had to go into the counting room and make sure they, transferred the cash and watch all these counters putting it through the machines, which was like just fascinating. The bank itself, I remember there's a great story. I didn't put it in the book. I was checking the accounts of the holders, and there was a guy who was a commercial attaché to Persia. So this was before the deposition of the Tsar, and this guy had £10,000 in his bank, always, until the event, and it went to 10 million. Right? And so I went up to my partner and said, he doesn't even sign the cards, he doesn't sign the checks, he just writes it out, £20,000 and gets the money. And I said, I think this might be dodgy. And the guy from Partner from Deloitte said, Nick, you're absolutely right, great letter to this account holder. And then he tore it up in front of my face and said, you won't be sending that. Because he was after his fee. Right? So that was back in the day before money laundering was even a big thing. And then I went to the tunnels. Right? So underneath Harrods, there are these tunnels that literally go streets, right? All the way, streets and streets all around Harrods. And they use them for stock. So it goes to the warehouse, and they move the stock in these like bonzas, right? And then they have these chutes that go up to the shop floor. Because if you go to Harrods, you won't see cartons like you do at QBD. You don't see cartons because we haven't got the tunnels. Start digging. So then they shove the stock up, it gets unpacked, and the carton goes down, and it goes onto the floor, and it's just brilliant. Right? And they had a safety deposit centre. Right, so I just had to take one of those. I was 22, no money, and I'm going like, a safety deposit box, right? Because it's cool, right? And I put a deck of cards in there or something. But I kept that for years, and that always kept with me in Harrods, the experience I had. And the only other amazing thing working there was the restaurant. And the staff restaurant was amazing. Right? And everything was £1. Right? So it was just like trout almondine with a pound. Right? Amazing.
So the Nautilus time machine is living underground in Harrods.
That's
right. We were very lucky to be chosen for QBD Book of the Month for August.
Very good. Thanks, buyers.
And the QBD buyers are here, and of course they're some of the best buyers in the country. But if hypothetically you had an Nautilus time machine, is there a particular book you would have bought less stock of or a bit more stock of?
I'm sure they would have done.
I just want to talk a little bit about the QBD Book of the Month program. So I think a lot of people know how successful it is as a program. A lot of people still don't really think about the contribution it makes to Australian writing. So literally people like Trent Dalton, who's a superstar of Australian writing from this state, helped launch by you guys and your team out there.
He wrote it today.
Yeah, and so I just really wanted to say, I think debut authors are finding it harder than ever at the moment, just because of retail conditions and funny macro things like the onslaught of TikTok and US content coming here and the like as well. So yeah, I just wanted to say I really appreciate everything QBDD does for all debut authors. And this is really, it's not really a question, it's really a statement to you guys. So I really really encourage you to, Nico has to sell 2 copies to every person or he's not allowed in the house that night. So one for your brother, for your dad, for your uncle, for your friends, and I'll get a couple of copies. Nick's going to sign them all, of course, as well. Anything else you wanted to say before I?
Yeah, I would like to just say thanks to everyone who's turned out for me tonight. It's very unusual and feeling a bit weird that for 2.5 years we've talked about it, fishing, and it was always like, oh, it might happen. To finally be here, with the book out in the world. I'm in safe territory in this room, right? But there's others out there. Now you're going to find out what happens, right, and what they think, and I think that's quite confronting. And I'd also like to say a big thank you to Esther and to the boys. My tech genius over here, Amanda, and to my super salesperson here, Nico. So I couldn't have made this book without their support. I'm sure that's true for every author. I look forward to them supporting me for the future and doing number 2, 3, and 4.
I also just want to close by saying I've been publishing a long time now. I've launched lots and lots of books from lots and lots of beloved authors. I've never launched a book from a good friend, so I just wanted to congratulate you and tell you how proud of you I am. I honestly still blown away by the fact that anyone can write a novel. I just think it's one of the more impressive life feats you can do. So congratulations. Well done, and I think we'll just raise glasses for those who have them.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Can I have your own recording? No?
Well, no. Okay.
Okay. Buy more books, I get more money.
With that, the Cherry Carnival officially launched.
Kieran, thank you so much. Nick, congratulations. And gee, chip off the old block, eh? And it is really lovely. And I think if you look at the bigger picture of life, we so often talk about people who run an industry or run a big business who have no idea exactly how it works. And I think, Nick, it's such an enormous thing that you've done to put yourself out there. And now no one can ever, it's not an accountant running a TV station. It's a man running a book company that actually has written a book, and it is a really exciting thing for you to do, and I think really amazing for all the staff that are here tonight, but all those that know and love you as well. To see what you've done, it's a huge achievement, so congratulations to you and the whole family. Enjoy the hospitality this evening, buy a book, and have a drink. It's on Nick, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh yeah, and also there's an after party at home for anyone who wants to come.